Hey, good morning, everybody out there. How are you doing? Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Just want to make sure everything's working fine before we get started. Can you guys hear me out there? Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for joining me for this Sunday stream. It seems like it's a little too early for me. I'm not used to getting up this early on the weekends and belting out a stream, but for those of you who have joined me today, I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to say good morning and say hi to everybody that's already online nice and early on a Sunday. I figured Sunday would be better because, Sunday mornings are kind of lazy. You have your coffee, you read your paper, join me for a chat. I think that would be a cool thing to do. But if you guys prefer a weekday, maybe an evening, then we'll adjust for that. So good morning, everybody. Please give me a little message to tell me if you can hear me okay. I don't want to be talking to myself here. Can you guys hear me? Let me just make sure everyone can hear me okay. That's the thing about this streaming software. It's really not the best in terms of what it offers in terms of flexibility and making sure everything's working properly. So you're kind of always a little bit awkward when you're streaming because you're not sure if everything's working good. Thanks, Bob. Thank you for letting me know that everything's working good on your end. How are you doing today? So today's stream, I wanted to talk a little bit about the old battle of, what's better today, what's winning the battle in terms of gear. Is it transistor, modeling amps, multi-effects unit, or the classic amplifiers? Everybody has their own preference, and for those of you who are into digital modeling, multi-effects units, that sort of thing, I wanted to discuss some of that with you today, as well as the standard vintage amplifiers that everybody loves, So for me, I have to get started by saying I'm not really pro or con for either one. I just like both because I feel that they both have their advantages and disadvantages. And I like to use whatever tools I can get my hands on that will encourage me to play, that will stimulate my playing and make me explore new sounds. But there are definite advantages and disadvantages to each one, and I wanted to discuss that with you today. So I wonder how many of you out there already experimented with multi-effects units, maybe played around with some modeling amplifiers, maybe Axe-FX, Kemper, that sort of thing. There's a lot of things out there today, a lot of technology you can choose from. And, if you're not careful, you can really go down a rabbit hole and end up spending a lot of time trying to recreate the sound that you were getting from a typical tube amplifier. If you guys are a little older like I am, before all this modeling technology came out, we really were just using tube amplifiers. And tube amplifiers were basically, the sound that's imprinted in our minds when we think about the classic rockers, people like Peter Frampton, Jimmy Page, all the guys, Gilmore. It's that sound that they were getting from tube amplifiers that typically we're trying to emulate today with multi-effects units. And they're getting very close. They're really getting very good today. And I have to say that within the last maybe 4 or 5 attempts that I've taken to embrace the multi-effects world, the digital world, they've gotten substantially better with every rendition that I've tried. It's amazing because, you think that the technology is kind of moving very slow, but it's actually doing this. It's really crazy. So the effects that I've been using in the past little while have been not the higher end effects, because honestly I can't afford the Axe effects and stuff like that. The Kempers, they seem really nice. They seem like they would do the job extremely well, but I can't really afford to spend that kind of money because I'm not a professional musician. I enjoy dabbling, but it's not really my thing to go out and spend that kind of money. And the thing about multi-effects units, digital modeling, that kind of stuff, is that they do expire rather quickly. When I say expire, it's kind of like what's happening with computers and digital cameras, for example. After about 3 years, the technology moves so fast that the modelers are not outdated. I mean, you can still use them; they work and everything, but by then, I think that the technology has advanced enough that you're looking at the next generation already. And so the value of the investment that you make in these type of products drop very quickly. And nobody really wants to have the second or third generation of, the Kemper or the Axe effects. So when you spend almost $3,000 on something like that, after 3 years, you're basically trying to sell it for maybe half the price, if you can get that kind of money for it. So the turnaround on these products is quite quick. You have to keep that in mind. It's not like an amplifier, because with an amp, if you buy a good amplifier, something that is sought after, people like, for example, the Fenders of the world, the Marshalls of the world, the Friedmans of the world, those types of amplifiers, they will hold their value even 10 years after you've purchased them. If it's a good amplifier and it's a good model that people are looking for, you're typically not going to lose too much on your investment, especially if you buy them on the used market. So for digital stuff, it's not really the same thing. So you have to keep that in mind. But the great thing about all these digital modelers is that they do allow you to have a huge palette of sounds available to you for a fraction of the cost that it would ultimately cost you if you would go out and get all those pedals, all those effects and amplifiers. So it's definitely something that you should have at your disposal and something that you should be enjoying and playing with. The tricky part in all of this, for me, I've experienced this numerous times. It's being drawn into playing around to get the stuff sounding the way you want it to sound. Typically, what ends up happening is that you spend so much time trying to tweak the sounds and trying to get them to sound right that you're investing a lot of time in the product. And I do that all the time. I'm very anal when it comes to sounds. I like to get the proper sounds when you're playing with a band in a live situation or even in the studio setting. And the tricky thing with anything digital is that you have to really understand how to set up the system and you have to invest a certain amount of time, there's definitely a big learning curve with any of these units. And they all have limitations as well. So you have to learn how to use the product, how to squeeze every last drop of sound from them that you're looking for, and be able to get into the ballpark. And one of the things that I never knew I would need is an FRFR speaker. And for any of you guys out there that are experimenting with multi-effects units, digital modelers, that kind of thing, you'll know what I'm talking about. If any of you are into that realm, just let me know. Just give me a little comment, because if I'm talking to myself here about digital modeling and you guys are not interested, we can definitely switch the topic. But for any of you that are interested in digital modeling and experimenting with it right now, you'll know what I'm talking about when I refer to FRFR speaker systems. They've come out on the market relatively recently, these speaker systems. And what FRFR stands for is full range flat response. And unlike cabinets, guitar cabinets that you would normally use when you're using a regular tube amp head, the speaker cabinet for a regular amp like what I have behind me is very limited in its frequencies. If you ever listen to music, let's say you take an iPod or something and you plug it into a regular cabinet and try and listen to music through it, sounds terrible. It sounds boxy. The reason that happens is because the speaker cabinets for guitars are designed really for that mid-frequency. Guitars are very mid-focused in terms of instruments. So when you're looking at a mid-focused sound and you want to tune a cabinet to it, you're really kind of limiting the lows, limiting the highs, and focusing on those mids. And what ends up happening is that if you're playing a multi-effects unit through a regular cabinet, you're kind of limiting yourself in terms of the sounds that you're getting out of it, because you're not getting the full spectrum. And every cabinet is colored. So when you're playing through a 112, 412, a 212, 210s, whatever you're using at the time, they're all colored to a certain degree. So you're not going to get the pure sound out of it. It's going to colorize the sound that your guitar is producing, then going into the head and then coming through the cabinets. And that mixture is what people like. That flavoring, typically guitarists mix and match heads and cabinets to get the flavor that they want. But when you're dealing with multi-effects units, that's not necessarily the same situation, because with a multi-effects unit, a digital modeling unit, you basically want to get the sound that is generated from the unit without any colorization, so that you know what you're going to be hearing at the end of the line. And to be able to do that, you have to get the equivalent of, let's say, studio monitors or something like that are extremely flat, that don't colorize your sound, and that produce a true rendition of the sounds that the unit is generating for you. So you want something that is full frequency, that doesn't cut the lows or the highs or focus in any specific frequency. And flat response, that means what you hear coming out of the unit is what you're going to hear coming out of the speakers. And full frequency means they don't cut any of those frequencies. So that's what's been coming out recently. And I never realized that I would need something like this, but now that I'm back and I purchased a Hotone Ampero, which I'm loving and digging, by the way. I really think it's a great little unit. I have it right here. I can play a little bit for you, but I don't know if it's going to come through properly. I'm playing through a speaker all the way down there. So I have it on a very clean setting. It's kind of like a Police Andy Summers type tone. And this is basically modeling a Roland jazz chorus with a bunch of little effects on it. I don't know if you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear that okay. I'm not playing really loud because it's kind of early. So, so technically when it comes to the world of modelers, that's what you're looking for. And I don't usually play my guitar when I'm using the modeler. I don't usually play into my cabinet. I usually play into, this is actually a keyboard. It's like a wedge that I have here. And it's got a tweeter, a woofer, and it's giving me a lot more of a fuller sound so that I can actually emulate what I would normally be hearing in my headphones. Well, I try and set up my patches with that so that when I actually get to a live scenario, I'm hearing something a little bit closer to the flat, true response I'm getting from the hotel. So I'm going to see who's still in the house here. So we have the Gospel of Mark. Hey, nice to see you, man. Thank you for joining me. I see Bob F. in the house. You guys are up early on Sunday morning. I guess you're either early risers or you get to bed quite late. I don't know which one it would be. Mark says the PRS looks awesome. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I really love this PRS. It's this is a student edition SE model that I picked up and I did a review of. It hasn't been used that often, but I do love it. I mean, it's a really great guitar for the money. These guitars, these PRSs are amazing. When you buy an SE, the new ones are nice too. I don't know how they fare compared to the older ones, but these ones are really nice. What I specifically like about them is the Clouson vintage tuners. Everything on the guitar screams quality. I mean, it's a nice thick semi-hollow body with the F-hole cut out here. The only thing I changed on this guitar is the pickups. And like a lot of budget guitars, well, budget, I mean, these guitars are not really budget. I think if you buy them new, they're probably $1,000 or more right now. I snagged this up used like I normally do, and I'm glad I grabbed it. The guy who I bought it from really didn't know his ass from his elbow when he was selling it. I went and try it out at his house, and he had put like really, really heavy strings on it. So heavy, in fact, that they were not even sitting inside the tuner slots. Ah, here comes my buddy. Let's see if she's going to come in. That's my dog. She likes to join me for my live sessions. There she is. She's going to come and say hello. Oh, there she goes. Hi there. Yeah, she always likes to join me for my live sessions, but she ends up falling asleep most of the time, like last time. So let me just close the door now that she's in here. Give me a second. All right, so as I was saying, so the guitars are typically very nice, and the guy that I bought it from had put these super heavy strings on them. He was probably playing drop D or something else, and unfortunately he didn't have it set up at all properly, and I guess that's why he sold it. He didn't enjoy it, and I saw that, and I knew it was going to be an easy fix, and I decided to grab it and set it up the way I wanted. The only thing I actually changed on it was the pickups, because I typically change out the pickups on most of my guitars anyways. So with these, I went with a set of Sanford Magnetics V68 pickups. The 68s are very low output. The reason he calls them 68s is because the bridge pickup is about 6.8K. So it's very, very low in terms of output compared to what you would normally get, which would be about 8K, 8.5, 8.7 in a typical PAF. So the reason I went with these low output pickups, because being a semi-hollow body, I wanted to get a little bit more of the sound of the body as opposed to the coloration that I would be getting with higher output pickups. The lower output pickups typically give me more, it breathes more, and it just allows me to get a little bit more of the natural sound of the particular guitar, and I really do enjoy that. Just want to see if I can give you an idea of the sound here. Now, tell me if you can hear this, because I don't know if you guys are hearing the guitar, but Can you hear that? The Gospel of Mike says, I have a PRS SE1. It's amazing. Have you ever tried one? It has a single P90. It's a rock machine. Yeah, I haven't tried the PRS one, but I guess those are the PRS guitars that they're making that are kind of competing with the Gibson Juniors, I think, right? It's that type of a guitar. And P90s, I've been looking, seriously eyeing a guitar with a P90 pickup in it, because I don't have one yet, believe it or not. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but the PRS SE1, that's the model with a bolt-on neck, or is that a glued-on neck? I confuse them sometimes, because I know that there's certain models that they're coming out with now that have the bolt-ons. So I don't know which one that one is. The cool thing about the SEs are that they don't really cut corners in any places that affects the sound. Beyond the pickups, I mean, the pickups were good. I just changed the pickups because I do that. I like to experiment. But the standard pickups in the guitar were not bad. But I just like to upgrade my pickups normally anyways. The thing that really blew me away was that I also have a real US Paul Reed Smith. And the US Paul Reed Smith I have, it's a CE and also a single cut. And it's a great guitar. So I like the single cuts. I like the guitars that have the 4 knobs like Gibson. And on my American-made version, I have the wraparound single bridge here like this, but it doesn't have the adjustable saddles on it. And this one, it has that. So they upgraded the saddles. Mine's the original saddle on the American one, and they didn't get to the adjustable bridge saddles yet when I purchased mine. Later on, they upgraded them. So now, if you look at their current models, they've upgraded the bridge so that it does include the adjustable bridge saddles. Now, the interesting thing is that if you go out and try and buy a bridge saddle like this from Paul Reed Smith for an American model, it's going to cost a fortune. This bridge is going to cost you probably $250. Yet, they throw them on the SE models. So if ever you're looking for an adjustable saddle, adjustable bridge, just look on eBay, try and find one for an SE, and it's exactly the same, pretty much. And you'll get it for a lot less than what they're asking for. Paul Reed Smith is great, but they do gouge on everything. Like if you want to change the knobs on your guitar and you want to buy Paul Reed Smith knobs, they're gonna charge you like $50 or $60 for knobs, man. Knobs are like, you can get knobs for like $3, you know. I changed the knobs on this one, by the way. This one standard comes with clear knobs. You can see the original. I have a review of this guitar. The clear knobs didn't do it for me. It just seemed a little weird. So I went with the darker colored knobs. These knobs have the rubber grips so that they're really easy to roll with a single finger, even if you're sweaty. So it's a good upgrade. So between adjusting the nut and fixing the pickups, the guitar is fantastic. So Mark says his guitar is a glued neck, and he says he has a PRS USA core single cut too, with the wraparound. Such a great guitar. It's a high quality piece of art. Yeah, they sure are, Mark. You can't go wrong with PRS. I mean, they charge a lot of money, but you're not gonna get a crappy PRS. You know, you're not gonna get something that leaves the factory and is not up to par. You're really gonna get an excellent guitar. You know, I wish I could say the same for some other brands, but that's not been my experience. So anyway. So yeah, so what are you guys doing today? Like what are you guys looking for in terms of gear? What are you guys shopping for? Are you guys into tube amplifiers, transistor amplifiers, multi-effects units? You know, what's got you excited? Let me know so we can talk a little bit about that in more detail. I wanted to also hi Vox Guitars Rock. You're back online nice and early. Thank you for joining me. Thanks. I appreciate the comment about the guitar. Yeah, I do agree. The PRS, these guitars look really great. I do like this particular finish a lot more than the other one that they have, which is kind of a greenish tinge. It just looks a little bit richer to me. So, excuse me. So Mark's into tube amps and a pedal guy. So you're like old school. That's pretty cool. What kind of amp are you playing? What kind of pedals are you enjoying right now, Mark? You got a Nobles ODR1 for Christmas as my main overdrive. I haven't tried that particular brand of overdrive. I've heard very good things about it. Vox Guitars Rock says looking for a pickup for my Martin Dreadnought Jr. Do you play live? Is that why you need a pickup for it? And are you talking about a under the bridge type piezo pickup, or you're talking about something that you could put in the sound hole? Hot Rod Deluxe. So Mark is rocking a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. What version of the Deluxe? Version 4. Okay, yeah, those are pretty good. I like Hot Rods a lot. They're great amplifiers. They really do provide you with a great sound. There's like the only thing I would say it needs help with a little bit is the overdrive. That's probably why you ended up getting the overdrive pedal. You probably don't play through the drive channel of the amp. A lot of people don't. They prefer to go through the cleaner channel and then boost that with an overdrive pedal. Hey Kim, how's it going? Kim's Workshop's in the house as well. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so the Hot Rod Deluxe, I had a very early version of that amplifier. The only thing is that the earlier versions were a little bit dark sounding to me, but they're tweakable. You can always change the speakers or play around with it a little bit and change the EQ on it if you have an EQ pedal in your effects chain with your pedals. Mark, I would highly recommend. I don't want to entice you to go looking for other amps, and it depends on what you're looking for in terms of a sound. But have you tried the Bass Breaker series yet from Fender? If you haven't, I would recommend you try and listen to the Bass Breaker 30Rs. They sound great, man. They really do. So Vox Guitars Rock says sound hole pickup for open mics mainly. Yeah. You know, miking an acoustic guitar for live situations is very hard. I think that, in my experience, whatever method you use always sounds a little bit plunky. It's hard to get a nice, rich sound, even if you're using piazzos. They don't sound right to my ear. They end up sounding a little plunky. I can't explain it, but the best option would be a mic, but you can't really do that in a live situation. But if you're recording with your acoustic, I would say go with a mic. You're going to get the best sound that way. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out the bass breakers, Mark. They're really great. I ended up getting a 15, but if you have the opportunity to grab one used, I think you're going to really like it. So the other thing I wanted to discuss, I get a lot of really great comments from my viewers, and I wanted to take an opportunity to basically answer just read a couple of comments because they're so great. And one of the comments that I had was specifically about this guitar, and that's why I brought it out today. And so the comment was from one of my viewers, and he says he visited a local shop recently here in Montreal, and he tried out all the Epiphones, the LTDs, the Ibanez's, all that kind of stuff. He went through a whole bunch of higher end gear, and even played some Gibsons, and most of them were quite nice. But he spotted an odd colored PRS in the rental section, the rental rack, and he decided to take a chance and try it out. And he was super impressed with the guitar. Says he really loves the neck and how it was put together, and the pickups were great. No need to replace them. Had the Kluson style vintage tuners, and he said he liked the way they used the wood to emulate the binding. So he was basically talking about this model, not this color, but this model. And PRS uses just wood. The way they paint the guitars, that's how they emulate the binding. It's not plastic binding that they put in. It's actually just the wood that they expose to make it look like binding. And he really dug the guitar. And he was basically asking me if it's a good buy. And they were asking, this was used, they were asking $950 or best offer. And it's a little bit high, but he says it comes with a case. So just to give him some advice, if he's out there watching, $950 is not cheap, but it comes with a case. The good guitars. The guitar is used. You can try and lowball them and maybe offer $800 for them. But these guitars typically now sell for over $1,000. So I got extremely lucky when I picked up this guitar. I paid well under that, and probably underpaid for what it is, but extremely happy with it. I really like the fact that the neck is satin in the back. They actually sand down the necks a little bit on these ones here to make them a little bit satiny. I really like that on my guitars. So I just wanted to respond to him and give him my opinion because they don't come up used very often, and when you do find them, sometimes they need a lot of work. So if you find something like that and it's in good condition, definitely grab it. Super guitars. So getting back to amps versus transistor amps, tube amps, whatnot, I think a lot of the people today are still playing tube amplifiers, but maybe people that are starting off are considering transistor amplifiers today because they don't want the headaches of dealing with tubes. Maybe they don't understand, how to take care of the tubes or how long they last and whatnot, and going for the easy solution, which is a transistor setup with maybe some multi-effects built in and some different types of sounds that are programmed into the units, and that's not a bad thing. if you're starting off and you want to have a little bit more flexibility in your amplifier. They're typically less expensive. They typically don't break down as often. Well, take that with a grain of salt. They do break down if they're cheaply made. It depends on how much you're spending. Um, Typically, the transistor systems that are under, let's say, $500 or $600 don't really spend a lot of money in terms of the cabinets. Cabinets usually MDF. The speakers in them are usually low-end speakers, and they're okay for practicing if you're starting off. But if you're trying to play in a live situation with something like that, although they might say that they're 100 watts or 50 watts, the wattage when it comes to transistor versus tubes is really not on the same scale. If you look at a 15 or 20 watt tube amplifier, they're friggin' loud, and some of them are loud enough to play with a band with a heavy hitting drummer. Whereas for transistor systems, a lot of times the rating is, they might say it's 50 watts or something like that, but it's really not as loud. I've tried some of the Katanas, I've tried some of the Peavey systems, and they're not bad. I mean, they're getting a lot better, but there's always going to be a little bit of loss in their harmonic side of things. Mark says he has a Boss Katana 100 212, and I have done tons of gigs with it. Sounds great and is very reliable. Yeah, I agree. It does sound great. I've tried them. I mean, they sound really good. And they're not expensive. That's the cool thing about them. You can pick them up for very little money nowadays, especially if you get them used. So what did you have before, Mark? I'm just wondering, did you switch over to transistor from tube, or do you play both transistor and tube? Why did you choose the Katana over something else? Vox Guitar says some solid state amps sound really good. OD channel generally sucks. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I had a Peavey solid state amplifier not long ago. Played around with it for a while. Sounded great. It really did. Why did I get rid of it? It was larger than I expected, actually. I was looking for a smaller practice amplifier, and for some reason I thought the Peavey was going to be smaller, but when I actually saw it, it was actually quite big. I'm looking for something small. So Vox Guitar says, my 40 watt solid state can't keep up with my 5 watt Valve Junior. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. The volume, the rating for the wattage is deceiving. If you don't know how the transistor amps react, you will be disappointed. You need a lot more than 40 watts, while tubes are extremely loud. If you take a Blues Junior, for example, and you crank it, that thing's freaking loud. Hobo Rody says, they are rated at distortion. Tubes still got a long way to go when they are just distorted. Clean, the number means more. Yeah, I agree. Thank you for joining. Hobo. Mark says he plays both. Got the Katana because I was gigging a lot, and it doubles as an acoustic amp. So I was doing a lot of acoustic gigs. And that's, I think, a lot of the thinking behind people switching over to digital and to transistor. It's more for convenience, to be able to maybe cover more ground, have something that is a little bit more reliable in terms of breakdowns, maintenance, overall weight. I think a lot of my buddies are choosing to go with lighter setups these days so they don't have to lug around heavy amplifiers and cabinets and whatnot. Yeah. Hobo says, my 35 watt Tweed drones out my JC 120. Yeah, I believe it. The JC is great though. The JC is great if you're playing police, if you're playing anything that's clean. Does a great job. The drive sucks, the distortion channel sucks, but the chorus is wonderful. I played one for a while, and I still remember that my high school days. My buddy had one, and I was like playing that, and I was using it to jam, and I was wondering why I wasn't able to get that Jimmy Page sound out of it, because I didn't really understand amps at the time. So the clear advantage of using multi-effects is just the raw amount of color tones, palettes that you have within a very inexpensive unit. That's why I've been drawn back and forth. I go into pedals a lot, and then I go back into experimenting with multi-effects when a new generation comes back, and I give it another try. And I'm always really amazed at how much of an improvement they've made over the years. Like if you let two or 3 years pass on by and you try a multi-effects unit again, after 2 or 3 years, it really advances quite a bit, leaps and bounds actually. And if you were not convinced and you've tried multi-effects in the past, give them another shot. I enjoy tube amps a lot. I like the sound of a guitar going straight into a tube amplifier, cranked, sometimes directly, not even going through pedals. If you can get that saturation that you want through the amp and you crank the amplifier and it just sounds great, to me that is the best sound, but you're limited, right? You're playing that sound and that's it. So if you're playing with a gigging band and you need to have the flexibility of having different sounds at your availability and being able to switch between those sounds quickly, nothing beats a multi-effects unit, and if you buy a good one and you program it properly, you can really do a lot with it. I've learned the hard way that it really does come down to how you're using the sounds. Most of the time, multi-effects units suck in terms of the pre-programmed patches that come with them. I've with the Hotone, the Ampero that I have here, same thing. They sound okay when you initially hear them, but then when you learn how to use the system and you tweak them, it sounds so much better, so much richer, fuller, less boxy and nasally. It doesn't sound like this, and doesn't sound fizzy, but you have to know how to tweak them. And a lot of people give up. They try the units and they give up before they actually get the sounds that they're after, And I've done that too in the past. I just didn't stick with it long enough to learn the system well enough, and I ended up selling my units and going back to pedals just because it was easier. But honestly, if you stick with it, and one of the big tips that I can give you guys is join the Facebook groups for that particular unit that you have, because there's a lot of great advice going around that is not available in the manual, or even through some of the reviewers online. They don't necessarily take the time to talk about the shortcomings of the units, and they just focus on what is, they do a quick sound demo where they're playing over some kind of a track, and it's not really a demo. They're not really talking about the shortcomings, what you need, how to do certain things. I'm trying to get some time to review the Ampero myself, and I want to make a video for it, but I wanted to really understand it, so I'm really taking some time to try and get the sounds the way I want them to be, so I can play them in a live situation and basically replace an amplifier. And I'm almost there, but I'm still tweaking. So I wanted to wait for that to happen before I actually produce the video. So if any of you are considering going with the Ampero and you want to get some information, some real information, tune in for that video that's going to be coming up shortly, because nobody gave me the unit. Like, a lot of these guys that review these units, they get them for free. I actually reached out to Hotone. I told them, look, I'd like to review it. Can you send me one? And they're like, no. They're like, it sells very well as it is. We don't need more advertising for it. So I'm like, okay, no problem. I went out and bought one. and I'm going to do my review. It's going to be an unbiased review, and I think that's the kind of stuff you guys are looking for anyways, right? So stay tuned for that. I think you guys are going to be impressed. So Hot Rod Brody says he plays them in an ensemble, mixed compression. Gospel of Mark says the Friedman back there cramped up is probably heaven. It really is, Mark. It really is. But of course, you don't have the opportunity to always crank up these things at home. And that's where the problem lies. You want to get that sound, but you want to get that sound at a lower volume, right? That's the big disadvantage. So unless you have some kind of an isolation cabinet where you can crank the hell out of it and put a microphone in front of it for recording, you're kind of limited. But it does sound good even at lower volumes. That's one thing about the Friedmans, is that there's enough bottom that even if you don't crank it, you can still get a nice full sound. The master volume on this thing, it does have a master volume, so the master volume works really well. But to get into that sweet spot, which I call the G spot, yeah, you gotta crank it. But once you're there, man, it is heaven. Hey Doug J's in the house. Doug says he uses a Fender Deluxe Reverb. Roland Blues Cube Artist goes up to 80 watts also. Blues Junior, I also have a Marshall DSL 5 watts. THR 10C, they all have their place depending on the place that you're playing. So it sounds like you definitely have acquisition syndrome for amplifiers, Doug, which I totally understand. Deluxe Reverb is a great amplifier. Blues Cube sounds great too. There's a lot of great gear out there, and I agree with you. Depending on what you're trying to do, they all have their pros and cons. Yes, Mark, that is the Dirty Shirley. It's the 40-watt full-size Dirty Shirley, not the Mini. And I opened up that amplifier, took some gut shots of it. Really nicely built, great amplifier signed by Mr. Friedman himself in the inside of it. Sean says, looks like one to me. LOL, yeah. Those are, if you're looking for a Marshall sound, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you're looking for a Marshall sound, and what I mean by Marshall sound is a recorded Marshall sound, the Friedmans are great. The Dirty Shirley is fantastic. If you're looking, a lot of people that have Marshalls don't understand that the sound that you get from a Marshall in the room is very different from what you hear on the recordings. In a room, if you want to get the sounds that you hear on the recordings, you need to crank Marshall up a lot. Now I'm talking about a Marshall, like more of a vintage style Marshall that doesn't have a master volume on it, right? So like the JCM 45s, that kind of thing, okay? If you want to get that sound, you really have to crank the amp. So if it's a Marshall Plexi that you have, same thing. Got to put everything really high. Otherwise, those vintage style amps are generally clear. They're clean sounding. So you have to really crank them to get that distortion. And when you crank them that high, first of all, your ears bleed, the neighbors call the cops, and your cat runs away. The thing is, that sound is not something that you can do inside your house. You have to basically have an isolation box. The Friedmans, on the other hand, are designed to give you that recorded Marshall sound right out of the box. And that is the difference. So when people try these and say, well, it doesn't really sound like a Marshall in the room, it's true. But it does sound like the Marshall you hear on a recording. So that's what you have to understand. I haven't tried the JJ, Mark. I've been intrigued by it, and I've been looking at a lot of reviews of it. It does seem to have a lot more gain on tap, which is not a bad thing. It sounds like, it really looks and sounds like a killer amplifier. The only thing, in my opinion, is that if you're playing amps, I tend to like amps that you can still get a little bit of a clean sound out of it, because if you don't necessarily want the distortion, or you want to get a little bit more flexibility, you're kind of stuck with an amp that's always dirty. The Dirty Shirley is not really pristine clean. I can get a clean sound out of it, but it's clean on the edge of breakup, which is still nice. But if you're looking for that really sparkly clean, it's a little difficult to get it with that amplifier. So that's the disadvantage with some of the Friedmans. A lot of people tend to go with the ones that are overly saturated in terms of distortion. The brown eye comes to mind. And you want to try and dial it in for some cleans. Sometimes you have trouble. So it depends. If you want to get that spanky Strat clean, like disco chords, the disco comping type of thing with these amplifiers, you're not going to really be able to do it that well. So you're going to probably need a second amplifier. But if you get an amplifier that does have a good bass, a good solid clean bass, you can get it as dirty as you want with overdrive pedals and distortion pedals. So it all depends what you're aiming for. It sounds like you're looking for a Friedman. You seem to be eyeing the JJ mark. Is my assumption correct? Now, one of the things that I have to say though is that when you do buy a Friedman amplifier, they're not inexpensive, but they will definitely hold their value, and they're made extremely well. And the cool thing is that you can call and you can speak to somebody at Friedman. They're going to give you their time, they're going to give you their opinion, and you're not going to get that kind of service from Fender or other amp companies like Marshall. You're not going to get that level of service. I'm pretty sure if I call and I get lucky and I say I want to talk to Dave himself, if he's in the house, I could probably get him on the phone. Mark says he was looking at the JJ, but it's out of his budget. Also looking into the PRS Sonzera amps. I've heard good things on them, good cleans, and good drive channels. Mark, I hear you. Yeah, the price range is always an issue with all types of gear. I haven't heard good things about the Sonzera, to be honest. So be careful with that. Read a lot of reviews. A lot of people are not happy with it in terms of its performance, its reliability. I like PRS guitars a lot. I'm not convinced that the amps are worth what they're asking for in terms of the quality. I don't know. I just feel that they need a little bit more time to experiment with amps before they come up with something really good. They're not there yet for me. One amp I could actually recommend you take a look at if you're looking for something that sounds great, not extremely expensive. They're not cheap, but the Rev amps are something to check out. Everybody that I know that's tried one likes the way they sound, and they have nice features on it. You can get lower end versions, higher end versions. You can get as much gain as you want, and they clean up really nicely. Excuse me. Vox Guitar says, what happened to the Crate V series of tube amps? They were all the rage for a while, same as Peavey Windsor. Yeah, you know what? I asked myself the same thing. The Crate amps, I remember playing a Crate way back, and it sounded really good. They had good speakers in those things. But they disappeared. I don't know. I guess too much competition, maybe. The Peavey Windsor also, they were competing. I remember seeing videos on the Peavey Windsor where they had the Windsor and a Marshall behind the curtain, and they were playing both, and they were asking the people in the crowd which one they thought was the Marshall. and people were choosing the Windsor, and the Windsor was pretty inexpensive too. But I guess there's something to be said for brand loyalty. People just want to get a Marshall. It's just like people want to get a Gibson or a Fender. That doesn't mean there's not other gear out there that is just as good or better for the same amount of money, but there's something about getting a Gibson or a PRS or whatever. Money-wise, if I had to choose right now, if I had to choose an amp that was affordable and flexible, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, check out the Bass Breakers. I'm telling you, the Bass Breakers 30Rs, they're not extremely expensive. You can probably start seeing them used soon. It's relatively new on the market, so they're not easy to come by used, but I would definitely wait for a used bargain. And you're going to be able to get a really nice clean out of them. You're going to get a nice, the Bass Breakers actually have a nice distortion for once. I think it's really because they're trickling over the technology in terms of the distortion sounds that they've been experimenting with on the EVH line, because Fender makes EVH amps, and those have quite a bit of gain. So I think they're kind of taking the gain structure that they're implementing in those amps and they're trickling them over to the new series. And I see that they're trying to bridge the gap between the American sound and the British sound. So the early Fenders were really American sounding, clean, very punchy, and the overdriven sounds on the channels were usually not very good. But now with the Bass Breaker series, they're kind of moving over the tones of their amplifiers, so they sound a little bit more British and they have a better overdrive channel. And the 30R has two channels, a clean and an overdrive channel, and they have digital reverbs. They're not spring reverbs. Some people freak when they hear that, but I don't really care. It's a room reverb, not a spring. So it actually sounds pretty good. Actually very good. And the advantage is that they won't break on you as easily, and they don't make that springy, boingy sound when you move them as you're playing them. And they usually have good speakers in them too. So if you're looking for a combo, they're pretty good. Check them out. So Mark says he used to have a Peavey Windsor and it died during the first gig I used it on. That sucks, Mark. Was it a tube problem or was it something else? Did it actually sound good? Like, in your opinion, was the Windsor, did it sound like a Marshall? Like, what was your impression of that amplifier within the couple of minutes that it worked? Usually Peaveys are pretty good though, like I'm surprised. I guess that line maybe was made cheaper for whatever reason. But I've had a Peavey Classic. I had a 30 Peavey Classic 30, and it worked for a long time. I never had issues with it. So maybe they were making them differently at that time. Peaveys they're reliable, man. I mean, a lot of people use Peaveys. A lot of people, I guess, the brand has been around for a long time. People like Steve Vai were even using Peaveys, and you can get some nice gear from them. The only thing I never liked about the Peaveys were they were close. Like, people who buy Peaveys sometimes want to have that Fender sound. They want to try and get that Fender sound from the Peaveys, and they just stop short of that nice punchy, sparkly Fender sound. So you end up spending time modding it and changing the speakers and changing the reverb tank and changing the tubes, trying to get that Fender flavor out of it, and you can't really do it. It's so then people spend a lot of money, give up, and then end up selling it and get a Fender. But if you want to get that Fender sound, a Hot Rod Deluxe will do it. Definitely Supersonic, like I have, the 22, definitely will give you that nice Fender sound. Fender Deluxe, they're all great amplifiers. Fender makes good gear. But I have heard some quality that Fender is having quality issues with some other amps as well. I mean, they're making their amps in Mexico. They're cranking a lot of amps out at the same time. So technically, you're bound to get some issues with some Fender amps as well. The good thing about Fender is that you can find a place to get them fixed relatively easily. Mark says the Windsor sounded fine, but once I cranked it for the gig, it just started crackling and died. It sounded like quiet Velcro coming out of it. This was years ago. I can't remember the exact problem. Yeah, that sounds like a tube issue. And tube issues are common, like the tubes either work or they don't. When they start failing, you start getting cut out, you start getting popping noises and whatnot. The good thing is that it's very easy to fix a tube issue. You just swap the tube and you're in business. So it sounds to me like maybe that's a tube issue. Sometimes the tubes get rattled around in shipping. When the unit is shipped over to you, it takes a beating unless the tubes are taken out of the amplifier and wrapped in protective material and shipped to you separately. A lot of times the rattling of the shipping is what does it. And also like when you're playing the amp, let's say you're going somewhere and it's cold outside and you don't give it enough time to warm up before you turn it on, then it could actually shock the tubes and cause issues. They won't last as long. But sounds like it was a tube issue to me, so it's not a really big problem. Doug wants to know, would you tell us what you think of the SE you're holding as I'm in the market? Yeah, I talked about it at the beginning of the video, Doug. I guess you weren't online yet. SEs are fantastic. This one I love. What do you want to know about it? I mean, it's a great guitar. How much do you want to spend? And do you want to buy one used or new? And do you already have a PRS? Or have you already played a PRS? Just so I know what you're looking for. Like, what's your main guitar right now? What kind of guitar do you enjoy? And I'll give you my opinion. I would play more for you. You know what the thing is, guys? Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Is that with all the copyright issues that you have with YouTube right now, I get anxiety when I have to play because I automatically gravitate to stuff that I know, songs that I know, and as soon as I play a couple of lines of a song, I get a strike from YouTube, and they basically demonetize my videos. And I have to be extremely careful what I play. So most of the time when I play something on a guitar, I have to like noodle something off the top of my head, which doesn't always sound pro because I'll make mistakes and stuff like that. I prefer to be able to play like riffs that I know, but as soon as I do that, I get like, I wish that was not a problem on YouTube, but it is, unfortunately. Vox Guitars Rock says SE versus Harley Benton. I guess you're referring to the Harley Benton guitar that looks like a PRS. So I did a review on that guitar also. I don't know if you've seen that video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out in my video archive. Both great guitars, different price ranges. So the Harley Benton version is a couple $100. These guys are selling for probably $1,000 right now. The thing is with the Harley Bentons, the pickups suck. So you're gonna have to definitely take out the pickups in those guitars. The guitar is nice. The neck is a little bit thinner. This guitar has a thick neck on it, thicker neck. So if you don't like thick necks, then that's gonna be something that you're probably gonna want to avoid. But these guitars, the necks are a little bit thicker. Think older style Gibson guitars. That's how the neck feels. But it's still very comfortable. And the Harley Benton, you might get more issues with finish issues. The fretboard on the Harley Benton is not rosewood. This is. The Harley Bentons use something else, and there's some kind of a stain on them, and it comes off on your fingers. So, you know, you do get what you pay for. But the Harley Bentons look really nice. You might have to do some fret work also on the Harley Bentons, whereas with the PRSs, you don't have to do that. Mark says, having owned several SEs, the quality is super high and I find superior to a lot of other Mexican level instruments. That's true. Although this guitar is not made in Mexico. This guitar is made in Korea. So Doug says, my guitars are Gibson Standard, Fender Mex, Strat, Fender, American Deluxe. Okay, so these guitars would be closer to a Gibson than a Fender, obviously. You can tell by the layout. The neck also, as I mentioned, it's a little bit on the chunkier side. So if you don't like chunky necks, then you might not like this particular guitar. I love it. The sound, obviously being a semi-hollow body, is a little bit more lively and richer. The back of the guitar is super comfortable, has the tummy tuck, which the Gibsons don't have. The heel on the neck here is nice and contoured, extremely comfortable. So Doug, I did a full review on this guitar. So if you haven't checked it out, you might want to check out my my archive. I went into a lot of detail, played samples on it as well. The only thing that I did on this guitar, and I mentioned at the start of the video, is that I did change the pickups. They came with a set of zebra style open pickups, and I switched them for these Sanford Magnetics V68s, which are low output pickups with nickel covers. I just think they sound great in this guitar. Low output brings out the sound of the guitar more than coloring the sound of the guitar by the pickups, you know. Mark says he prefers his PRS Korean SE to your PRS US S2. They both play amazing and sound great, but I don't like the bevel cut of the S2. To me, it looks odd. You can't go wrong with a good SE. Yeah, I agree with you, Mark, and if you want me to take that PRS off your hands, it sounds like you really don't like it, I'll be more than happy to take that from you and dispose of it immediately. The good thing about PRS guitars, Mark, is that you can always sell them and you'll be able to sell them quick and you won't lose that much money. So if you really don't like the S2, then you can always sell that and get another SE or maybe two SEs, whatever you want to do. Doug, my pleasure. I'm always happy to give information on gear. Whatever helps you guys out is least I can do for you guys participating in my videos and in the chat and whatnot. So, I mean, what are you guys looking at this year? Are you guys eyeing any particular gear, or are you guys just happy with what you have? I'm just wondering because I'm just curious to see if there's anything that I should check out that I haven't already looked at, and maybe do some videos on them. The only thing that I bought recently, again used, I ended up going back to a MXR carbon copy delay, analog delay. I had one in the past and I ended up selling it, and I not regretted it, I remembered it sounding pretty good, so I ended up buying another one. And I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I mean, I like it, but I'm going to do a shootout for you guys on the carbon copy delay and a Joyo delay that I have. Different ends of the spectrum in terms of pricing, but they don't sound the same, but there's advantages and disadvantages to each one of them, and I wanted to go over that with you guys so you can see what the differences are there. And I also picked up a TC Electronic chorus pedal. I figured I'd try that out. But to be honest with you guys, I don't use chorus all that much. It's the type of pedal that it's good to have, but at the same time, sometimes it just takes space on your pedal board for nothing. I'm experimenting with that one. I'm going to also do a shootout because I also have. I got this right. This is a analog chorus from Joyo as well, and they claim that this pedal is close to the Boss, the vintage Bosses, the chorus pedals, same kind of color. I had one of those vintage Boss pedals, and it doesn't sound the same, but I'm gonna put it up with the TC Electronics one, and we're gonna do a side-by-side comparison just to see if you can get the sound, this sound in that pedal and that pedal to sound like this pedal. The cool thing about the TC Electronic gear is it does have a lot of flexibility with its tone print feature. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a tone print, but it allows you to beam custom settings from your phone. It's amazing how they do this. You get the tone print app on your phone. You basically plug in your guitar, go through your pedals, turn on the pedal, beam with the app. You hear it's like a modem. I don't know if you guys remember the old telephone modems. You hear this digital sound, and then it programs the pedal, downloads that tone print, which is basically a custom setting that they offer on their website, right into the pedal. So if you want to have, let's say, you want to emulate that vintage Boss pedal that costs a fortune, well, there's tone prints for that, and it's crazy because you can switch what you need and you can have a lot of flexibility and not get stuck to one particular type of chorus, which I like a lot. They have the same technology in their delay pedals and in the reverb pedals, which I find is really cool. So I'm looking for a flashback delay actually at the moment because I was using this guy. I was using this, which is a Donner Eternal Bind. It's kind of a copy, a cheap and expensive copy of the flashback. It has the same kind of features to it except for the tone print option. So you have like digital analog, ping pong, pan, modulation, reverse, hold. Now, the pedal is not bad, except when you're dealing with some type of amplifiers, it generates a lot of noise. I noticed that with the Fender amplifiers, and I would go into the effects loop, it would become very noisy. Other amplifiers, it wouldn't do that. So it kind of turned me off because it works well in certain cases and it doesn't work well in other cases. So I'm trying to replace this, and I want to go with the TC Electronics Flashback. Now they have the Flashback 2, I think. So if I can get my hands on one, I'll do a side-by-side comparison of those two as well. The thing is, a lot of the gear that you can get today, there's probably a Chinese company making a knockoff of it, but there's always going to be shortcomings. Again, if you're not a pro and you're not anal like I am, it might be fine for you to use the less expensive gear. It'll do a lot, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. But sometimes you do want to have the ability to play with all your gear and not have issues. And this one I noticed was very noisy in certain cases. So what's going on in the chat, guys? My S2 Custom 22 High E saddle is bottomed out, and the action is perfect. Afraid the future the neck will change. Is bottomed out. Do you mean the intonation is bottomed out? Is that what you're saying? Do you mean the bridge saddle is all the way back and you can't go any further? Gospel of Mark says, I'm always looking for gear. I have major gas. Well, that's why you're here, man. We're all addicted, right? We're helping each other. Carbon copy is the staple of my board. I can't find another delay that I like. I like how it's dark in the modulation settings. Yeah, I'm not, the darkness is not the issue. I find that I use my delays for just a little slap back delay normally. And I find that the carbon copy is in the slap back settings is a little boingy. And I just want to have a slap back without too much, how can I put it, springiness to it, kind of. I don't know how to describe it. The flashback, you can get it, but you have to be very, very like surgically precise to get that setting. Whereas the Joyo that I have was a lot more forgiving. The modulation setting is good though. Corona Chorus, use a Dimension M tone print. It's just like the Dimension C. I'm going to write that down. Thank you for the tip. Dimension M. All right, I'm going to check it out. You're going to hear my dog barking, muffled barking. She's dreaming right now. So don't be afraid. You hear her? She's having her sexy dog dreams or something. Dimension M tone print. Okay, I'm gonna check that out. Thanks for the tip. Jay says that he played the 8-inch speaker Supro, didn't care for it. 8 inches is not enough. That's what she said. Seriously, guys, I had a Supro, and the one I had, the dual tone, sounded good, but it was limited in its sounds. So the thing about Supro amplifiers is if you want that sound and only that sound, then you can go for it. But if you're looking for an amplifier that's going to be more flexible, you're going to be limited with it. Box Guitar says, I've been tempted to buy a Gibson Les Paul Tribute, but 1,400 at Long and McQuaid. Yeah, you know what? I tried a Tribute. I've actually, you know where I found one? It's going to be weird that I tell you this, but Best Buy. Best Buy was selling guitars, and they had a Tribute, and it was like totally not set up properly, totally banged up, and it felt very cheap. You know, for $1,400, it's not that much of a deal. Honestly, save your money, keep your eyes open for a used standard, and it's not going to cost you a whole lot more, and sometimes you can get a good deal, and you'll be a lot more happy with that one, I think. Yeah, and the classics are even less expensive. That's true. I'd go with the Les Paul Classic over a Tribute. Francis is in the house. Hey, Francis, good morning. We've been talking about stuff for over an hour already. You're joining in late. I guess you're a late sleeper. I don't blame you, man. I had a hard night last night. I was still awake. It was like 3 in the morning. I was still awake. So Francis says the flashback 1 and 2 are great. Take a look at Kit's music. He has one used. Well, Kit's is my good friend, Tony. Yeah, I'm going to go take a look. Do you know how much he's selling the used one for? And does he have the 1 or the 2? You can come across used ones quite regularly. Often they're asking about $150 for it, used. So I'm not in a rush to get one because I know that you can get them all the time. I just want to get one for a good deal. Jay says, yeah, the bridge saddle. So the bridge saddle's all the way back, and yeah, I get what you're saying, Jay. Depending on the type of bridge saddle that you have, this is a little tip. If it's a Les Paul style bridge saddle that has like the triangular bridge, I can't show you here because I don't have, do I have a Les Paul? Yeah. Well, this part of the string, if it's triangular and it's bottomed out, you can take it out, flip it the other way around so that the top edge of the bridge is further back. And you'll be able to get a little bit extra play. You can also remove the spring or put in a shorter spring so that you can get further back. But hopefully you won't have to do that. So Jay was saying he was gassing for the Jazzmaster till I actually played one. Yeah, that's happened a lot to me actually. I gas for stuff and then I tried it and I don't like it. We're talking about PRSs earlier, and I was gassing for the McCarty, the PRS McCarty for the longest time, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta get that one. I gotta get that one. And then I went and played it, and it really didn't feel right to me. I'm glad I didn't buy that one. I also did the same thing when I tried the Gibson Junior. I tried one out recently, and I'm like, nah, it's not for me. The neck felt too chunky in my hands. Have you tried the Way Huge Aqua Pussy? The one, that one is known for its slapback. No, I didn't. I've never tried anything from Way Huge. Maybe I should try it out. Electro Harmonics Memory Toy is a great inexpensive analog delay. Yeah, the Memory Toy, Memory Boy, they're all great. Keith says, compressor recommendation. Compressor. Well, honestly, I'm not an expert at compression. I'm actually using a really shitty compressor at the time. Right now, I'm using, where is it? Do I have it here? Compressor I'm using currently, I don't even have it here, is a, do I have it on my board? I took it off my board. It's a very inexpensive compressor that I have. So I'm not the right person to give you advice on compression, but even a cheap compressor is better than no compressor. And you can go crazy with compression and spend a lot of money. I don't know if it's really required to spend that kind of money on a compressor, but maybe the others will be able to give you some advice on that. Vox says, my guitar step on my stomp box sometimes. Interesting tones. Yeah, it's a great way to experiment with new settings. My dog does that too sometimes. Sometimes you come out with stuff even better than you could come up with yourself. So, Mark says, Keith Exotic SP compressor. Yeah. The SP stuff, exotic stuff is great. I have an exotic pedal on my board all the time. The EP booster. I use that all the time. It's one of those always on pedals for me. But I haven't tried the compressor. Francis says, I had a flashback one last time I was there. It was about $100. That's pretty good. That's not bad. $100 is decent. I'm gonna check it out. I haven't been to Kits in a while. I drop by now and then, and he always has new stuff. The stuff is it's a great place for anybody looking for used gear, and Tony's great. Highly recommend if you're in the area to stop by Kits. Yeah, the Gibson Juniors, it's just because, if the Gibson Juniors were less expensive, I'd grab one and work on it. Like if it was, $400 or something like that. But at the price they're asking for it, I'd rather pick up a Harley Benton or a Tokai Junior knockoff or something like that, and work on it and get it the way I want it to be, you know. But to spend that kind of money and not be happy with it and have to do work on it, I don't know. Doug recommends the Keeley compressor. How much are those compressors, Doug, out of curiosity? Do you know what kind of price range they're selling at? I know Keeley makes good stuff, but I know that they're also not cheap. So, I'm going to ask you guys a question. You guys, just out of curiosity, okay? What pedal on your pedal board or the pedals that you're using right now do you consider indispensable? Not necessarily, how can I put this? Like for overall functionality and flexibility, which pedal do you think you would get rid of last? Beyond distortion or overdrive, because everybody wants to have a distortion overdrive pedal on their board. So beyond distortion and overdrive, which pedal do you think plays a major role in getting your sound right now? Just curious. Jay says, do you ever use a fuzz? What are your favorites? You know what? I experimented with fuzz pedals a little bit because I do like the tones that I hear on the Rival Sons recordings. Rival Sons, for you guys that don't know, is an up-and-coming band. They're getting quite popular, and the guitarist uses heavily fuzz-based effects to get a big fat sound. So I was curious, and I tried a couple of fuzz pedals, and I didn't like them. I built myself a fuzz face, and it just sounded like my amplifier was about to die. It didn't sound refined or usable in any way, and I guess that's what fuzz pedals definitely are meant to do anyway. But then I bought myself a fuzz pedal. What was it called? Oh man, I can't even remember. Anyways, it was a fuzz pedal that is it's too early for me to remember these things right now. It was a fuzz pedal that was very expensive, sounded great. But then again, I got another fuzz pedal from a kit, this one. And there's nothing on it. It's called DSOFM. DSOFM, Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, it's a kit that I built, and it sounds almost identical to the expensive guitar fuzz pedal that I purchased for over $300 and sold. And I kept this one, and you can get some nice fuzz sounds, but it also cleans up, so you can get some nice Gilmour sounds out of it as well, without sounding like your amplifier is going to blow up. So the range in tones with this one was quite impressive. Plus, it also comes with it's a nice sparkly case. I don't know if you can see it there. Pretty cool. Love it. So I kept it. But I don't use it that much. From time to time, I pull it out and use it, and you can get some nice vintage fuzz sounds from it. But the fuzz face that is hyped, everybody talks about fuzz face when they talk about fuzz, because a Hendrix I didn't like. So Doug says the Keeley is about $168 approximately. Yeah, so they're not giving them away. Vox Guitars Rock says Bad Monkey is my favorite pedal of all time. But the Bad Monkey is a distortion or overdrive pedal. You want to know what your favorite pedal is that is not a distortion or overdrive pedal. Hobarodi says, Leal P-split. Gotta run at least 2 amps. Interesting. Have any of you, speaking of running 2 amps, have any of you ever tried running like a 412 cabinet and having just the wet signal of the reverb going through a smaller side cabinet? If you have a reverb pedal that can output just dry reverb, wet reverb, and kills the dry signal, run it into a secondary cabinet in the room. It doesn't have to be a big cabinet. If you have a small 112 Roland Cube or something like that, it sounds huge. You can get the Eddie Van Halen reverb sounds out of it, and it really fattens things. It makes everything sound so much better. Jay says, I would enjoy doing a kit pedal. It's a lot of fun. I could recommend you check out General Guitar Gadgets if you want kits. They have kits that you can build yourself as well as kits that you can buy already made. I purchased a couple of kits from them. One is my favorite. It's on my board right now. It's called BS IAB 2. Brown Sound in a Box 2. And honestly, I was using the Pinnacle from Wampler, one of my favorite pedals for that brown sound for a long time. And the Brown Sound in a Box 2 has been on my board longer than this one has, because it just sounds more like an amp. It sounds more like an amp. It sounds more raw, and I built that one myself. I think it cost me, I don't know, between 60 and 80 bucks or something, while the Wampler is probably over 200 now with the taxes. Doug J says the compressor by Keeley, it has to switch one signal coil and 1 4 humbuckers. Okay, yeah, that's good. So it has I guess an internal switch or an external switch, so you can choose if you're playing singles or humbuckers on it. That's cool. I'm almost finished my coffee, guys. We're gonna have to wrap it up, I guess. I'm gonna have to get myself another coffee soon. So, what time is it? It's 11:30. Okay, so we've been talking for an hour and a half. Francis says, I run 2 Vox M50s clean with 4 BC 108 cabs to run a wet dry rig and sometimes change it up for stereo. It's amazing. It opens up to another world of tonal possibilities. Yeah, I agree with you, Francis. That's what I'm saying. If you guys haven't tried this, try it out. It really, really opens up the sound a lot. Makes it sound so much bigger. There's a lot of stuff you can do. What multi-effects units you can get closer to those type of things as well, because you can run digital stereo. You can go to 2 stereo speakers. You can take full advantage of the ping pong delays. It's a lot of fun. But with regular gear, when you're running a 412 cabinet and stuff like that, you're a little bit more limited. But if you have a secondary cabinet, since I have other amps, but you want to have a cabinet that's powered, right? But you can play clean, so that has an effects loop. That's the only thing. So if you have a small cabinet that has an effects loop in it, take the reverb, pump it through the effects loop, just the wet signal, kill the dry, and you're going to see it's just going to sound humongous. Holborodi says, I have 4 different modulated amps, Feeding an open back super Beetle cab just for my different modulations. Wow, it sounds like you have like some heavy duty rig going on there. Are you a pro player or are you just a hacker that likes to have interesting gear and interesting setups? Hey Charles, nice to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. Hobo Rody says he has 4 PH1s going right now. Okay. So Hobo Rody is definitely a man after my own heart. Hey Doug, anytime man. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys. Definitely catch me on the next one if you can. And some of the videos. There'll be more stuff coming, Doug. Charles, what's up? What's going on? Keone says, thoughts on boutique guitars? Yep. Man. Boutique guitars. That's another rabbit hole. What when you say boutique, what do you have in mind there? What are you referring to? Hobo Rodic says it never leaves the farm. Yeah, I would imagine so. Charles is asking me if I like the SE. Definitely, Charles. I spoke about it at the top of the video. You can watch the rerun of the video. I'm going to post it after we're off, and you'll be able to see me talking about this guitar. Charles, I also have a full review on this guitar in my other videos. So if you want to check my video archive, you can get the lowdown on all the details of this guitar as well as the sound samples as well. In a nutshell, it's a killer guitar. I'm super happy with it. What's not to love? Thanks, Keone. Yeah, the PRS, the SEs are great. This one's really nice. I definitely enjoy it. Hobo Rody says, don't try it at home. And Jay says, I got THR. Vox says, thank you very much for your time and expert advice. No, thank you guys, man. You don't have to thank me. I want to thank you guys for joining in all the time. You guys are a great bunch of fellows. I'd love to be able to meet you someday and maybe go for a jam. I know some of you are in Montreal, so who knows? Maybe eventually we can run into each other at Steve's or at Long McQuaid or at Tony's place at Kit's. Who knows? Hey Johnny Beans in the house. Nice to see you. Welcome. Jay says the single cut SE and how they put brass saddles on it. Mine has set intonation. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay. So yours has set intonation, okay. But you know what? They do have, like this one, the American version of this guitar that I have has set intonation, but they also sell the saddles that have adjustability built in. So maybe you can swap them out. Keone says boutique like smaller builders but kind of high priced. People say there's more attention to detail but the prices are pretty high. Is it worth it? Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question. Is it worth it? If it's what you're looking for, it's definitely worth it. I haven't really purchased any boutique guitars. Like when I say boutique, I mean hand built. Unless you consider Sir Boutique, which maybe you do. I don't know. The only guitar that I tried was a Porter guitar, which I also have in my video reviews. You might want to check out. It is, I guess you can consider it boutique because it is hand built. Not that expensive. Killer guitar, plays really well, has really nice pickups in it. The neck feels wonderful. The body finish was great. You can really see it's high quality. And I think that one was selling for about $1,800, which is not extreme considering Sirs sell their guitar for like 4,000 now. And I wouldn't consider them boutique. They're basically part casters, you know. Yeah, Johnny Bean, I've caught his shows, and that's why I like to see Johnny here. Thank you for joining us, Johnny. I enjoy your content as well. So what else are you guys looking at? What kind of mods are you making on your guitars? Anything specific you guys normally swap on your guitars beyond the pickups? I mean, for me, a pickup is the first thing that I consider doing when I bring in a new guitar. If I don't immediately bond with the pickups, they're usually out, and I will put in something else. There's so many people out there winding pickups today that you can really get some specific tones that are quite good without spending too much money. And honestly, the pickups are the heart and soul of your guitar. So if you want to get that sound and you're not getting it right now, consider a pickup swap. For me, the pickups, number one, the nut, number two, oftentimes the nuts suck. The nuts that they put on their guitars, really garbage. How about you guys? The main thing with the nuts that I see is they just cause a lot of binding right over here when they're not cut properly. Oftentimes when you get you bend and the guitar goes out of tune and stays there, it's usually because the nut is cut like garbage. So if you put in a properly cut nut, that usually goes away. And I've seen that on higher end guitars as well as low end guitars. Even Gibsons have a lot of issues. Gibsons come out of the factory with a lot of issues with their nuts, and you change the nut, that goes away. So Jay says, I love taking the Squire and changing everything. It's always fun. Mormouth necks or Fender necks or pickup tuners. Yeah, me too. I do that all the time. I have two Squire Contemporary Series guitars in the rack right there. There's actually the red one and the white one. Those are contemporary humbuckers. And play great, and it's pretty nuts. One of the guitars that I like the best, that I built myself, show that to you. It's a part caster. So it's a part caster. It's this one. I built this one myself. I was looking for a Fender Telecaster in this color combination, the vintage with the rosewood, and I saw some online. They were selling them for a fortune, and I figured, you know what, I'm going to build one myself. So I bought the Fender parts. This is a Fender body. This is a Fender, well, it's an aftermarket Fender neck that I went for because I wanted to have the truss rod here and not here. And I like the rosewood a lot, and I wanted to have frets that were a little bit bigger. So I basically put it together myself. I have the typical Telecaster bridge, except you can see on this side, I don't know if you can see it there. On this side, there's a little section cut out of it so that you know, when you strum, it's not digging into the palm of your hand. So that was a little upgrade that I made. And I also put in some locking tuners. And it's one of my favorite Telecasters. It plays so well. I did a review on this one as well. So if you guys want to see that, you can go into my archive and just check that out. The pickups on this guitar are amazing, and the neck just feels so nice. And I actually stained the neck myself, and I wanted to get that sort of vintage color to it, which I did, and it just plays so nicely. When I go into the stores and I try Telecasters and stuff, it's like they just don't feel right to me because they're not set up the way I want. Bone nut, not plastic, which I cut myself. I did a lot of work on it, you know. It really plays great and sounds fantastic. So whenever you're looking for something specific, don't be afraid to build it yourself. And honestly, I would put this guitar up against guitars costing way more than what it cost me to put this together. Especially with Fender style guitars, it's so easy to do. You can just get the parts yourself. And if you can spend more money on good quality parts and put it together yourself and have a killer guitar, as long as you know what you're doing, especially with the setup. RMJ471 says, do you use a subwoofer with your studio monitors? No, I don't. Not at the time. Not right now. The studio monitors I have right here on my desk are Mackeys, and they have a really big woofers, so I get plenty of bass. Now, just give me a second, guys. Jay says, looks like a nice Partcaster. Definitely does. Vox Guitar says, any luthier recommendations to do a neck reset on a 1960s Framus acoustic guitar? There are a few places that you can try out, but they're not cheap. Offhand, I would say I usually don't go to too many luthiers. I usually do my own stuff. So I don't want to give you a recommendation that I haven't actually used myself. So the best thing would be to probably ask around and see what other people would recommend. Have I ever heard of Wiggins pickups made out of wood? Phil McKnight talked about them. I just put them in a Strat Partcaster. I've seen them. I haven't tried them. They look interesting. I don't know. I mean, there's so many pickups out there. I've tried so many pickups that are not even expensive and sound great. So definitely experiment with different companies when it comes to pickups. Guys, we're going to wrap it up soon. It's 11:48. We've been going on for almost 2 hours again. I didn't expect to go past half an hour, but we're going to wrap it up. So are there any other questions you guys want to discuss before we say ciao for now? The only reason I didn't do this tomorrow is because I usually jam on Sundays. Sunday nights. Sorry, I didn't mean tomorrow. I mean later at night. It's because I jam on Sundays. Anything you guys want me to talk about it in my upcoming videos? If you guys want me to check out something specific and review some stuff for you, definitely let me know and I could try and do those reviews for you. I have a lot of stuff that I've been meaning to do, including the Dirty Shirley back there, including the Bass Breaker 15, some pedals, wireless systems as well. A couple of guitars that I haven't talked about. A lot of stuff. So if you guys want to hear something specific coming up, just tell me what you want to hear, and I'll definitely try and accommodate you guys as well. Keone says, if you can, is there an underrated part or mod or guitar gear you'd recommend? There's a lot of stuff, man. It depends on what you're looking for at the moment, but mods, when it comes to guitar mods, it's definitely pickups, and obviously if you're playing a humbucker, it's going to be, you know, certain pickups. Humbuckers for me, Porter pickups are great. Monty's guitars makes fantastic humbucker path sort of copies. Pariah makes great pickups as well. Tone Rider definitely makes some good pickups for Strats. For Strats, I like the Tone Rider City Limits. They sound great. What else would you want to know? Underrated part or mod. Like I mentioned earlier, the mods for me are locking tuners, a good quality nut, a good quality pickups, and obviously if your bridge sucks, you would want to change the bridge as well, but that's usually not the case. Lynette says, pickups seem easy to start a do-it-yourself career with. Yeah, I don't know about that. Honestly, I don't think the winders that we have today are making a killing. They're probably just scraping by. There's a lot of competition out there, and if you're doing it for fun, it could be interesting, but if you're doing it to make a career out of it, there's probably easier things to do. Dennis says, nearly 4 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Time to go back to bed. Thanks for your videos. Hey, Dennis, I appreciate you waking up or not going to bed so late in Australia. I'll try and schedule any upcoming videos a little bit later or earlier so that you don't have to get up so early in the AM. Coney says, rock on, man. Thank you for tuning in, Coney. I appreciate it. Vox Guitar says, good stream. Thanks. Have a good day. Thank you for tuning in, Vox Guitar. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Keone says, thank you, man. Just open to ideas at the moment. Any help, appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll check them out. Yeah, Keone, watch my other videos. I got a lot of videos on a lot of gear. And if you have any other questions, just put them in the comments section. I always answer my questions. I definitely enjoy your comments. So if there's anything specific you want to know, you can ask me there. Lynette says he meant for fun. Yeah, for fun, it's definitely a lot of fun to build your own pickups. If you have a lot of guitars especially, then you can definitely try and hone in exactly to the sound that you're looking for. But it's almost like trying to reverse engineer a recipe for a cake. There's going to be a lot of trials and errors before you get it right. So get ready to spend a lot of time on it. I agree, business isn't fun. For me, if you're enjoying something like gear and you get into business, you kind of lose the passion because then it becomes a job. I prefer to stick to playing the guitar for fun and let somebody else do the business side of things. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up. It's 11:54. We've been online for almost 2 hours. Again, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Always nice to hear from my fellow viewers. Some of them that are even local, I've come to learn, which is fantastic. Definitely, for those of you who are local, by the way, and you want to join a Facebook group, I actually moderate 2 groups local here. One is called the Montreal Musicians Exchange, and the other one is the Montreal Musicians Group. So the exchange is more for people that are looking at selling gear, used gear, and it's sort of like a marketplace area where you can post used gear. And the musicians network is more for people that play in bands, cover bands, and whatnot, and want to advertise their shows, want to reach out to other fellow musicians in the area, and want to hook up with other musicians to play gigs and whatnot. So I just wanted to say that. And obviously there's more information on my website, addictedtothegear.com. So if you haven't already checked it out, go check out the website. I also will be sharing some free patches on my website for the Ampero from Hotone. There's a free section in the menu at the top of the page. You can go there and download some of the patches if you have an Ampero, or if you're planning on getting one, I'll be sharing it there. So that's some additional tips for you guys. Francis says, time for some pasta. Thanks for the stream, Tony. Ciao. Have a good day. Francis, what time do I need to be there? And can you save a couple meatballs for me, please? Thank you for joining me, Matt. I really appreciate it. At first, I thought your last name was DiMarzio. Then I realized it's DiMarzio. It's DiMarzio, but not like the pickups. All right, man. So have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good rest of the weekend. Stay tuned to my channel. There'll be more great videos coming your way. Really had a lot of fun discussing stuff with you here today, and I really appreciate all the support, all the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, guys, please do that so that you'll be notified whenever I have some live streams and I post some other videos out there for you guys to look at and review. So that's it for today. Guys, stay tuned, keep rocking, like I always say. Talk to you next time. Have a good one, okay?